many of us with ADHD become very good at reading the room. And I become very good at understanding your emotions as a survival mechanism. This isn't good though when I'm trying to develop myself, because sometimes I don't understand where you begin and I end because I'm so busy reading your emotions.
So you're mirroring the person that you're having an interaction with
Yes.
to protect yourself
To be
from
safe.
criticism.
Yes.
But a consequence of that is that's pulling you further away from understanding who you really are.
Exactly.
Dr. Tamara Rosier is an author who works exclusively with ADHD clients
to help them live more effectively with the condition.
With a PhD in teaching and a wealth of lived experience helping people with ADHD.
Dr. Tamara Rosier's mission is to help you realize your brain is not broken, just different.
ADHD runs in families. And so if it runs in families, there might be someone else in my family who doesn't manage their emotions well. Now that compounds my experience, because if I were adopted into two neurotypical parents, maybe they would have structured my day. I would have less of a lag because of their structure. But now I'm just running to catch up. ADHD is not a strength, but we are heroes. Anytime we succeed, anytime we do anything, it's an underdog story. We should be celebrated like the heroes we are, because it's hard. Everything is harder for us, and that's just the fact.
Loyal listeners and viewers, I can't thank you enough for tuning in. If you've ever felt broken or different, I hope this helps in your search for answers and community. And do you know what would really help me in return? By clicking the follow or subscribe button wherever you're listening. It might not seem like much, but at ADHD Chatter, it means a huge deal. And with this, I can book more incredible guests and keep the self-discovery fire alive for all of us, myself included. Just one click of a button goes really far. And remember, you have always been enough. Tamara, thank you so much for being here today.
It is great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So surreal when we know someone from the internet who lives so far away and then they are in the studio. Thank you so much for making the journey.
I was thinking the same about you. Like, hey, he's a real guy.
Yes. I want to ask you a question, Tamara, that I ask all my guests first, and that's a really basic one, really. Within the neurodiversity space, what's your mission?
Yeah. So my first book is called Your Brain's Not Broken.
Yes.
And I really wrote that entire book with just this strong mission, just to say, folks, you're not broken. You're quirky, but you're not broken. And I think that sums up my mission.
Why do you think so many people do feel that, though? Why do you think so many people do feel broken?
Okay, so I'm going to nerd out right away. All right. And I know you know this, but you know the prefrontal cortex, right? Because we don't have reliable access to that, we rely on our emotional centers. And we rely on emotions. We're like method actors going around going, what's my motivation? Well, we're making emotional meaning out of everything. So if we feel a difference, then we start to feel, that difference must be wrong. And then quickly that turns into shame.
Yes.
Plus, shame is a motivator for some of us. And so that's why I think.
Shame is a motivator.
Oh, yes.
What type of motivation could shame create?
A really crappy one. So there, in my first book, I write about 6 bad ways to motivate ourselves. Just some nasty things that we do. So anger can be very motivating. And again, because we don't have reliable access to our prefrontal cortex, we rely on the limbic center. And so we're looking for what's my emotional motivation. So we're out there going, I've got it. I'll be angry. That's going to motivate me. Shame is like this. Shame and then its cousin, self-loathing, kind of creeps in there. And we'll use shame to try to measure up to what people think of us, to please others. Sometimes we develop just this negative voice in our head. So we try to motivate, but these are lousy motivators. So please stop.
Shame is such a Achilles heel, I feel, within the community. But if it is understood, can it be channeled into a positive form of motivation?
No. Let's get rid of shame. Let's 86 all of that. Because a lot of us All right, I'm going to get a little philosophical here.
Sure.
And maybe controversial, and I don't mean to be.
Okay.
But a lot of us with ADHD have a self-worth that isn't fully formed. And it's because we have an ADHD brain. We're relying on emotional signals all over the world. And then we don't develop our sense of self as strongly. We may have strong personalities, but our sense of self meaning, here's where I begin and you end. And a lot of my ADHD clients don't have that. And so what happens because of that, we don't develop this strong sense of, I know who I am. I know what I stand for. That means we can't handle things like shame. We can't handle things. We really need to work on this identity to hold ourselves to go, I know who I am, what I stand for, and I can be kind and gracious while still holding my boundaries. And a lot of ADHD folks don't have that.
Not knowing who you are, I think, is such a pandemic within the ADHD community. I've said before, I don't think it's a deficit of attention. When we find something that is a true alignment with who we really are, we have an abundance. We can become the best in the world at that thing. I think it's more of a deficit of self-awareness because of years and years and years of masking, pretending,
Absolutely.
putting other people's needs ahead of yours. And I totally agree with you that putting exercises in place to work on your self-awareness is the foundation of ADHD management. Because when you figure out who you really are, right, then when things come into your now, like a new job, a new relationship, a new person, a new hobby, you can pick that apart and say, is that a good fit? And then when you're making better decisions, then you're less likely to abandon. And when you stop abandoning stuff, then your self-esteem goes up, your self-worth, all of the positives that I associate with ADHD go up.
Right.
Do you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely. The reason I said, hey, this can be a little bit controversial is because people get very upset when I start talking about sense of identity. Again, they hear it as a broken message. And I'm saying, oh no, we're just little kids growing up. We're just trying to survive. I mean, I remember being in third grade. I didn't know when recess was. And I looked around at the other kids, went, are these magicians? How do they know it's recess? Like, how does everyone know things that I don't know? And so that was in third grade. And then fourth grade, fifth grade. So I'm just running. And you know that we run 3 to 5 years behind. So I'm trying to play this catch-up game. So instead of developing my healthy sense of identity, well, it's kind of chipped away. Like, Tamara, you're not good enough. You're not doing it right. You should know this, right? By the way, I was terribly embarrassed. I was in third grade. I didn't know my left from right. I have something called dyscalculia, too, which probably is that, but that sense of being different. So as other kids were developing a sense of identity starting around 13, 14, 15, I'm still playing catch up, going, what's my left and right? And so it's no wonder that we end up slower to develop a healthy sense of identity.
The story you just said about being on the receiving end of criticisms in your early years, that's an echo of so many people listening. I think the statistic is 20,000 more negative criticism someone with ADHD will experience in their early years because of that difference. And a consequence of that is, what do you think? Do you think those criticisms can compound over a childhood to create a trauma?
Oh goodness, yes, they do. It is compounded. So now let's also add into another factor, right? ADHD runs in families. And so if it runs in families, there might be someone else in my family who doesn't manage their emotions well. Now that compounds my experience. Because if I were adopted into 2 neurotypical parents, maybe they would have structured my day. I would have less of a lag because of their structure. But now I'm just running to catch up, right? So it's amazing. And my framework for ADHD people would be this. ADHD is not a strength, but we are heroes. Anytime we succeed, anytime we do anything, it's an underdog story. And we should be celebrated like the heroes we are, because it's hard. Everything is harder for us, and that's just the fact.
Absolutely. And it's one of the myths that I always try to debunk when I hear someone say, people with ADHD just need to try harder or work harder, because we are trying so much harder underneath than the average person to achieve the same, because of that invisible effort, that invisible workload that's going on inside our head, that inner critic.
Right. So imagine this. An executive function, our short-term memory issues. Holy cow, it's amazing I can get dressed in the morning.
Yes.
And I mean, if you followed me around, you'd be like, oh, it's amazing she does anything. But when one of us succeeds with ADHD, we should be celebrating that, because that person had to work so much harder to get where they are. And that's just exciting.
What do you think the difference is between someone who has ADHD and they do manage to reach certain highs that society would define them as successful, whereas the other group of people with ADHD who it is such a burden, it is such difficulty that they are struggling to get over the line? What is different between those two groups?
Yeah. I say this frequently. I'm lucky. I had a couple lucky breaks. So ADHD is very environmentally sensitive, which means the environment you're born into affects your ADHD and how you develop.
If someone's listening and they're thinking, I haven't had many breaks, I don't have financial means to help me with some of the challenges, my family weren't very supportive. In fact, they really shunned the diagnosis when I went to them. I don't have community around me to speak to people. I feel very alone. What advice would you give to somebody at that stage who knows that they have ADHD, but they're really struggling to articulate the words to ask for help?
I was that person. I didn't have a community at all. And I was very alone, and it was a very hard time. And so if that person's listening, first of all, don't give up on yourself. Put all your bets on yourself. Something I love about ADHD, if you're wondering if you have ADHD and you think you have it, if you're sitting there wondering, you probably do. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you're exploring.
Yes.
You probably found your people. So in this day and age, you can find your people. Let me tell you, once you meet an ADHD person, don't you just kind of feel a kinship? Like,
you start
you're
finishing each
ADHD?
other's sentences and you're just off. You get that vibe straight away.
You do. I can be at any party and I will find the 5 ADHD people at that party.
Yeah, the radar just goes beeping off when you come across one. Yes.
So I just want to encourage your listener, don't give up on yourself. And do the self-work that you need to do. A lot of times, out of our pain, we'll try to wall ourselves off. Go against that and really try to break down the walls to break out. And there's so many ADHD friends around you that you don't even know yet. I'm staying above a pub, and I was just sitting in the pub this afternoon watching, and I'm just going, oh, I bet you that person has ADHD. That person has ADHD. So I'm not trying to have your listeners develop a drinking problem, but maybe a pub would be a good place for you. Have some still water and
people watch and think, that person, if you're looking at and you see somebody and you think they have ADHD, what do you think are the flags of ADHD more broadly? I read on your website, you wrote that it's forgetfulness and irritability, but are there some niche subcategories that really explore that a bit deeper? What characteristics would you look for in someone who, to you, would be like, ding, 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 ADHD?
Okay, so ADHD people tend to use more of our faces than other non-ADHD. Sometimes I'll say, oh, do you have ADHD? Like if we're in an ADHD conference or something. And I'm saying that to go, I already know because of how you use your face. So what happens is we use muscles. There are muscles in our face that we can't control, right? Those of us with ADHD use a lot more of those muscles. And so for the professionals who can detect lies in faces, we're an easy read. All those micro expressions are just popping out.
Yes.
So I can usually tell. I can also tell in my clients when they haven't taken their medication that day, because their eye movements are very sharp. Also, ADHD people really are the most interesting to me. So if you're highly interesting, using a lot of your face muscles, I'm like, odds are you're my people.
Our internal BS radar is off the charts. We can detect when someone's not being truthful. We can see through someone's BS and see their true agenda before other people can.
You know, being authentic is so funny for people who really have to mask to get through life. We really value authenticity. You know, when I wrote my first book, I was so embarrassed to put it out there because I thought I was too vulnerable. I've said too much. Tamara, you should have just not have taken any risk. And yet the number one comment is, you were vulnerable in this book. And if you know me, I don't like to be vulnerable. I'd rather just kind of not. But I think our ADHD people, our group, really values that authenticity, vulnerability. And when we meet, I think that's what we land on. It's this authentic self.
What do you think causes it? Where do you think it comes from, this kind of intuition, this being able to spot danger? Because I've got my theory that it's related to those 20,000 negative comments we had as a kid, right? Stop fidgeting. Why are you so weird? And the compounding effects of those creates us ultra aware of danger. So we're always on alert.
Yes.
And we can see risks, we see people's true intentions, and it's connected to our early years experience of being in danger.
Right.
So as an adult, we've always got like this radar. I joked saying it's the BS radar, but really it's a response to all of those criticisms. Do you agree with that?
So the human brain, well, all mammals are obsessed with being safe, right? So as a child, we sat in school, we went home, and we learned to turn up the volume to listen for safety. Because of all those comments. Like, you didn't put your name on your paper. You didn't do this. You didn't do this. And they might not even be insults, but just not measuring up comments, right? So all that, we turn up the radar and we become very empathic. We become very good. Many of us with ADHD, this isn't obviously true across the board, but many of us become very good at reading the room. And I become very good at understanding your emotions as a survival mechanism. Now, remember I talked about how this isn't good, though, when I'm trying to develop myself. Because sometimes I don't understand where you begin and I end because I'm so busy reading your emotions.
A quick word from our sponsors to address a big ADHD issue, the notebook fallacy. We all convince ourselves that buying that one magic notebook will solve all of our problems, but it never does. Nor does the second one, or the third, or the 10th. Well, Tiimo app is more useful than having all the notebooks in the world. And what use are notebooks if you keep losing your pen anyway? Tiimo app has hugely helped me organize my chaotic life by offering the most user-friendly interface an organizational app has to offer. The difference is, it's designed by neurodiverse brains for neurodiverse brains. And you can tell, it's built to adapt to your neurodiverse way of thinking and be flexible to your way of planning. And now it's even more simple with the AI planning assistant. Tiimo now offers an incredible new voice transcribing service, making it even easier to use. A simple voice prompt when you have to plan something or something pops into your mind, and the new AI planning assistant hears it and transcribes it instantly into an easily digestible list of instructions for you to remember. Tiimo is here to help you simplify planning, build focus, and make life happen. No more decision paralysis. The new AI planning assistant makes it so quick and easy to insert information, you can do it before you've forgotten or been distracted. Give it a go and use the link in my bio for 30% off. Just a note though, this code is only applicable on the web browser, not on the smartphone. Then, when Tiimo solves all of your problems, go ahead and use your notebooks for something useful, like propping up a wobbly table leg or mopping up a spilt coffee. Back to the episode. So you're mirroring the body language, even the posture, sometimes even the interest base of the person that you're having an interaction with to protect yourself
To be
from
safe.
criticism.
Yes.
But a consequence of that is that's pulling you further away from understanding who you really are.
Exactly. Nicely done.
The sensitivity to our surroundings and being acutely aware of people's facial expressions, people's moods, people's true agendas, that can be very beneficial. It's almost like a survival instinct. But on the other side of that, it can make us very sensitive to criticisms. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I'm sorry, that's the understatement of the year, right? So, very honestly, I'll finish this interview. I'll leave and I'll think, oh gosh, I hope he enjoyed himself. I hope he did a good job. Feels like this was good. I hope, because I don't leave here going, yeah, that was a great conversation, Tamara. You did great. Like, oh, I don't know. How did everyone else feel about it? Now, I'm a pro, so I have a good talk to give to myself. I'll go out those doors, down the stairs, and start saying, Tamara, it is what it is. You did your best. It's fine. But do you see what I have to do? It's a secondary learned behavior. Because I'm so used to tuning in to go, are you happy? Is this what you had planned on? You see the sense of self gets a little wobbly there. Right? Now, what if we finished and you said, Tamara, that was awful. And then I say, oh, I thought it was okay. Now, because of all that emotional dysregulation, I'm more apt to just take that in instead of saying, I disagree. I thought it was a great conversation. Can you tell me more about that? I'm more apt to say, oh gosh, he's probably right. And you know what else this means? I'm a horrible person. Do you see how we just take in the rejection and we start to build and build? And it's because it goes back to those boundaries, those earlier boundaries of, well, Alex wasn't pleased, but I was. You see how messy this can get in relationships?
It escalates so quickly, doesn't it? Like firstly, I reassure you, I'm having a great time. You're brilliant, and I don't hate you.
And I think you're brilliant too.
It's classic, isn't it? You can have a great conversation with someone at a party, doing a podcast,
Exactly.
at an event, and it can go really well. But then you can leave, and you're like, "Oh no, I overshared again," and
What
that
have I
person
done?
thinks that I'm too much, and now hates me. It's that realization that it's that inner critic kind of screaming at you.
Yes.
Telling you that person genuinely, the friendship's over now. You can't possibly maintain the friendship because that person now hates you.
I love when someone calls and says, call me. And let's say I do some leadership coaching too. And if someone says, please call me, I'm like, well, they're going to cut off the engagement. They've seen through me. I'm no good at what I do. I go there so quickly. Now, I'm overstating it, but these are my innate thoughts. Not innate. These are my developed thoughts, but I have to get the secondary process to go, hold up, Tamara. Let's go back to the boundaries. Who are you and what do you stand for? What do you believe? And so I have to always keep going back. I leave conversations all the time going, oh, was I dumb? Did I sound stupid? And, it's really, I think so many of us with ADHD do this. And it looks like we don't have confidence in ourselves. In the moment, it can look like confidence. And then afterwards, we're like, what have I done?
But there's brilliance there all the time. Like you are never too much. You are always amazing. It's just that inner child that has been exposed to all of that nastiness is trying to tell you that you're broken because of all those horrible comments. And like the way you're acting in the here and the now there's nothing wrong with that. It's amazing. Right. It's not it's almost like your nervous system is so terrified of being snapped back to those early criticisms. It's so terrified of being triggered.
Well, okay, let's talk about that for a second. And I talk about this in my second book. But there's a monkey. There's a whole set of monkeys in my head, right? And so they're all there talking. So I have anxious Amy. I have critical Kelvin, and I've got a lot of them. But let's just deal with Critical Kelvin for a minute. Critical Kelvin hops up on my shoulder, invisible monkey. No, I don't actually hear voices. Okay, that's a whole different
Good disclaimer.
That's a different podcast. But so the monkey pops up, Critical Kelvin pops up on my shoulder and says, well, Tamara, you told that story again, didn't you? I told you not to be that open. People think you're stupid now. And then anxious Amy, the other monkey, goes, oh dear, what if he's right? Oh, that sounds familiar. That's her voice. And Critical Kelvin they just kind of get together and start talking. And both monkeys are there to help me. They've developed their ADHD symptoms, but they've become coping mechanisms to protect me. And so I have to learn to look at Critical Kelvin and say, hey, buddy, I know you sound like a jerk, but you're just trying to help me. You're trying to keep me safe. So I don't want to flick him off my shoulder. I don't want to hurt him. I want to treat him with kindness and say, thank you, but I think you're wrong. And anxious Amy, thank you. I know you're just worried about a lot, but I think it's okay. And so I have to learn to talk to my inner critic and to guide my inner critic into, sometimes people are like, just shut your inner critic out. I'm like, no, they're trying to help you.
It's so interesting. Do you think it's possible to, in your quest to find your true self and limit the amount that you mask, but in doing that, are you in effect rejecting your inner child? And in doing so, can you trigger yourself?
Wow. Nice. I think that's a great thought. I haven't thought about it exactly like that.
Neither have I.
I love it. You just set a puzzle for us, and I love this.
I think if in essence, if you're masking, you're obviously not being true to your inner child.
Right.
Therefore, are you rejecting yourself? And in doing so, are you living in a constant state of being triggered subconsciously?
I think you're right. I have not put it together like this. So inside each one of us is inner child. And we usually have like two. So mine is a 12-year-old. And they usually go with points in your life that something big happened to you, right? So my 12-year-old pops up, and she had to be tougher before she wanted to be tough, right? She had to stand up to some people that other adults wouldn't stand up for, to. And so this kid had to be tough. And actually, I think my 12-year-old could be part of the mask. I always have to go back to reassure the 12-year-old, hey, it's okay. We've grown up. I have more sophisticated systems now. We don't have to fight. We can do other things. I can use my words differently. So it's a way of actually calming my 12-year-old. In me, at least, my 12-year-old is part of the mask. I'm tougher than what I am.
I had Ned Hallowell on the podcast, and he said his number one advice for all of this is to never worry alone, and to find your tribe, find community, have a support network of people that truly understand your lived experience so you can bounce off each other. How important do you think it is to find your tribe? How soothing can that be?
Well, we all want to just be seen and valued for who we are. And I think there's such immense joy when we find people who just see us and we're actually relaxed and we don't have to be anyone else. So even if it's just one other person that you can just totally be yourself with, I don't think you need a whole tribe. I think just that one person who sees you and gets you is a gift of a lifetime. I am a co-leader for the ADHD conference, the International ADHD Conference I don't know, I can never say our title right. It's the big conference in the US. Oh, I hope no one's hearing this. But anyway, so I see all of these ADHD folks come together, And you'll see in the hallway of like, you have ADHD? I have ADHD. We're going to have lunch together. And there's just this excitement of being seen. There's a lot of times at this conference where people will cry because they'll sit through a session and go, no one has seen me like this before. And so that's the beautiful part. We're everywhere. We have infiltrated everywhere. So finding at least one other person, just start looking. You know, the psychological principle of if you start looking for yellow cars, you'll see yellow cars.
Yes.
So I want to say to your listeners, start looking for ADHD people. Follow your gut. You're going to find them.
Out of all of the people that you have found, your tribe, people with ADHD, what do you think is the most debilitating aspects of the condition?
Sorry. For me, personally, it's, oh goodness, my working memory. I mean, it can almost, I need parental supervision some days. Yeah. It's amazing how my short-term memory is bad. And that's it's not just because I'm super old. This is literally part of the ADHD experience. So I don't know if this has happened to you, but have you ever said, okay, future self, I'm going to set us up for the next day. I'm going to lay out this and I'm going to do this and do all this. That's great. You know what my future self does? Forgets that all happened. Now, sometimes I'm delightfully surprised if I discover it, but I have to leave enough trails for myself to remember that I did it.
I have a great hack to solve that problem because I used to do the same. I realized that my nighttime brain was like great. Yes. Great, efficient, optimal morning brain, first half of the day, terrible. So I plan my day the night before, like you just said, but I write the 5 high priority tasks that I decide upon. I write them on little bracelets. There's little cheap rubber bracelets you can buy on the internet. And I write each task on a bracelet and I put all 5 on in the morning. And as I go through my day and I complete each task, I take off the corresponding bracelet and I put it in a bowl. And if I fill up the bowl, which sometimes happens, then I reward myself. I buy myself something off my Amazon wish list. So I gamify it as well.
I love that.
Where do you think the memory issues comes from? Because I know lots of the diagnostic, the DSM-5, it speaks about executive function challenges and dopamine and noradrenaline issues in the prefrontal cortex, but I don't think it focuses enough on the emotional aspects of ADHD. And going back to those 20,000 negative criticisms we had as a kid, and because of that, as an adult, I truly believe it creates a lived experience of always living in the now, because we're always alert for danger.
Right.
We're always in the present.
Yes.
And things that are in our past and things that are in our future can, because of object permanence, really cease to exist. So things leave our now and we forget about them. And I think there is an emotional explanation behind some of the memory challenges that we face.
So the memory challenges, we tend to store memories, and this is kind of in our emotions. So you and I tend to rely on emotional memories. So you remember how someone made you feel, right? That's how we store memories. Our schools expect us to have semantic memories, prefrontal cortex activity, right? So we store memories differently. Short-term memory is part of the executive function, and it's a very weak thing. And it's like short-term memory should be a whiteboard, and you should be able to write on it, and just working memory says, here, I'll hold that for a moment. It should be there. But my whiteboard is so tiny and it has an invisible marker. And so it's like it's gone as soon as I write it. And so I really can't rely on short-term memory. And it's almost funny how bad my short-term memory is.
Yeah, it's why so many of us forget our clothes in the laundry, right? In the washing machine.
Exactly.
Because we put it on and then we go upstairs.
Then it disappears.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, so to compensate, we go to our limbic center to kind of raise our emotions. So if I want to remember the clothes in the washer, I'll say, Tamara, you have to remember because you want to wear this, and you won't feel good if you don't get this out or what. Like I'll have to create some kind of emotional memory about how I will feel if I don't get these clothes moved.
That's really interesting.
It's so much more complicated than just remembering.
You're sort of hacking the experience by putting an emotional consequence of forgetting into the equation.
Right.
That's fascinating.
But that's exhausting.
It's not an autopilot feature, right?
I'm sorry?
It's not like an automatic function.
It's not automatic, no. I have to constantly learn to hack my brain. I have to constantly think, okay, how is it that I'm going to be able to remember this? And if it's important. Now, granted, I can write a Post-it note, but that's just clothes in the washer. Think of all the other hundreds of things I do in the day, right? So if I'm saying, I want that pair of socks out of there because it's going to be a cold night and wow, will those socks feel good? That's my emotional bookmark to go back to.
Are there other examples of how emotion could be hacked to improve working memory?
I can guarantee you, your listeners hack their emotions all the time, but in a negative way. So in my book, I call it like an angry neighbor. So if you imagine that there's just this friendly, calm butler in the prefrontal cortex.
Okay.
And he's saying, Alex, it's time to get ready to go. Alex, your shoes are over there. Your keys are there. Remember to grab your lunch on your way out. And you're like, wow, thank you, butler. You are helpful. And he says, of course. We don't have that, do we? We have instead in our limbic center, this little angry neighbor. And he takes off his shoe and he's yelling at you over the fence and he's throwing his shoe at you. And he's like, Alex, I told you not to forget your lunch. You hear the emotional hacking? He's just an angry neighbor trying to remind you. This is the last time you're going to do that. And he chucks things at you while you're just, that's the kind of relationship we have instead of this calm, lovely butler in our prefrontal cortex. So ADHD folks, we have all kinds of emotions swirling around there. We're already hacking it in a negative way. And that's usually damaging to ourselves and to our relationships. And so we really want to try to hack it in a positive way. It's hard. So it could be this. Well, changing the laundry is very important for me. You know what? I'm going to set a timer on my phone and I will be okay. When the timer goes off, I'll still do it. And if for some reason I don't, I'm not going to hate myself. That's a better way than just with that metaphorical angry neighbor throwing things at you. Tamara, I told you to take it out of the laundry. Rah, rah, rah.
I want to talk about RSD for a second. How would you define RSD?
Oh, everyone wants to be accepted and loved. But those of us with ADHD have a very sensitive trigger. And so I define RSD as anything that triggers the I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And we talked earlier how sensitive we are to our environment. Wow. RSD just affects us, doesn't it?
Out of the many people that you've coached with ADHD, do you see a common theme of things that might trigger RSD?
It's really everything. So let's look at not what triggers it. Let's look at the effects of it. So let's say we have a married couple. And a married couple anticipates, oh, if I say that to him, he's going to reject me. So I don't say that important thing. Or you might say, well, I don't like spaghetti for dinner. And then I hear, he hates me.
Yes.
And so RSD is very complicated for us because it creates inward kind of drama. Also, it creates outward drama. It changes how we act with each other. We don't take risk because we're afraid of being rejected. We fear that we've hurt someone, right? And let's add that a lot of people with ADHD are very sensitive people. And I don't know about you, but I hate to think when I hurt someone. Is that true for you? I'm just wondering.
100%. We feel things so much more. I think
Yes.
it's not always RSD that does the damage. It's the things I put around myself to protect myself from the possibility of being triggered.
Right.
It is the people pleasing.
Yep.
It is the saying yes to things that I really, really don't want to do because I don't want to upset someone.
Yes.
It's the inability to put boundaries around myself. It's essentially being a yes man. It's that which creates this cycle of overcommitting to stuff.
Yeah.
And then what does that cause?
Right.
Like the crash, the burnout.
So I have a check-in that I do with myself weekly. It's kind of a check-in, like how are we doing, Tams? How are we doing in this world? And one of the questions is, have you faced RSD at least once this week? And what that question means for me is, have I done something that I could have been rejected for? Now, I like that question for me because it keeps me living a risky life. Have I taken a risk? I sent in a proposal to a book a couple of years ago. And I thought, all right, they are going to reject me and I am going to be okay with that. And guess what? They did reject me. And they said, we don't want that book, but we want you to write this book instead. And I said, well, I can do that. And so I risked being rejected.
But they just redirected you. It wasn't a rejection. It was just a redirect.
Well, at first I'm like, oh, they didn't want that. Guess what? They were right. They're publishers. They know, right? And they took a risk on me. And I really appreciate that. But I had to put myself out there. And so I think instead of maybe us describing what RSD is, because I think your listeners know, like we just say RSD and they're like, ooh,
Yes.
like it's like
The
that
pain.
moment in Lion
Yes.
King where the
Yeah.
hyenas are like, ooh, Mufasa, say it again.
Yes.
Like we
That
know we're,
disarms it if you just imagine it's a lion.
oh, we don't. And so everyone does know what it is. Let's maybe talk about how we put ourselves out there. What's the antidote to it? Sorry, I'm not the interviewer. I just asked you a question, but
Well, for me, it's about looking at the things I put around me to protect myself from being triggered, and how do you manage those? Like the people pleasing is huge. I was always a yes man. Like my knee-jerk reaction when asked to do anything, whether that was taking on a work project or go to a social event, was an instant yes, because I thought I can't possibly say no. They'll hate me.
Right.
Just a simple reframe of that, rather than saying yes, say, can I let you know tomorrow?
right.
Like a simple adjustment puts
Antidote number
space
one.
between
Excellent.
and
Yeah.
that itself is a boundary. And you realize that after 24 hours goes past, a lot of the time it's not a yes, it's a no.
Right. You know, a lot of people with RSD want to be understood. And I have this speaking pattern in my own life. I catch it all the time. We want to be understood. So we're going to go the extra mile to try to explain, like, wait, don't say anything until I just want you to understand and not reject what I have to say. Right. So even in speech, we have to be willing to challenge ourselves in speech. So let's say I'm in a meeting with all neurotypicals. So I'm already feeling like the black sheep. And I know that if I'm likable, everyone's going to like me. But I don't agree with something. And so how do I bring it up at a meeting? Right? So I have to understand this RSD that I'm feeling. I already feel like the black sheep because I know that I'm neurodivergent and I'm in a neurotypical world. Okay, take a deep breath. I'm going to take the risk. I have a question. And then I pause. I pause and I have a question. Yes, Tamara. I'm wondering if it's going to work out this way or this way. And it's a way that I've learned to disagree in still a likable way that's safe enough for me. Now, there is a blunt side of the ADHD that says, I don't like this idea. I think it's really stupid. But I know that if I let that out, I do risk being rejected, and then I'll punish myself later for that. So even in our speech, we have to address all of the RSD, right? So are there times when you should be saying, no, I don't understand this? Or is there a better way? So if your listeners start to look, RSD is everywhere. Look to your closest relationships, look to your work relationships, and then start to analyze, does it come out in my speech? Does it come out in my behavior? Like, yes, I'll do that for you. Yes. Does it come out in your attitude? Like, yes, I am just going to pretend everything's okay right now, when it's really not.
And I think the more you stand up for yourself in those environments, in that meeting, or when someone asks you to go to a social event and you don't instantly say yes, like the more you do that, the more you realize that that's okay. And it's never ever met with hostility like you feared it would be. It's never ever met with that person thinking that you're rude. It's okay, let me know tomorrow.
Maybe I'm hanging out with wrong people, but sometimes it can be met with an impatience of, no, we've already decided this. But you're not understanding that if we do this, this could happen. And so I have to go back and say, do I have a valuable insight? Do I belong? Do I have a seat at this table? Do I belong here? The answer is yes. Then I have to stand up to myself and say, Tamara, put your rejection sensitivity aside and say what needs to be said.
In the moment where someone is triggered and that horrible feeling that everyone is very familiar with comes to the surface, that internalized anger or sadness is very present and in the moment. In those moments, do you have any advice, any tips for someone on how to get through that?
Yeah. This isn't going to sound great, but take a deep breath, and there's times you have to stand up to yourself and not believe the narrative that you've written. So it looks like I have this script going. They're hating me. I'm pretty sure. Take a deep breath, stand up to yourself and say, listen, you belong here. Say what you need to say. Be true to yourself. Say it in a kind way, but be true. So you have to stand up to yourself for it.
It's having that moment of awareness that you are not broken, you're just different. And I think the earlier someone can have that moment of realization, the better. What sort of practical tools can you offer to help people with ADHD to first recognize some of their shortcomings or maybe their blind spots, if any, and then to manage those?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any blind spots, so I can't answer that really. And obviously I'm trying to be funny. None of us know we have blind spots. And so we really need to ask people.
Sorry, that joke went right over my head.
I know. That's why I had to explain it. But we're good. We're good. You went, this is going to be an awkward conversation. No, but in all seriousness, we don't know that we have blind spots. And so we can't say, go work on your blind spot, because we really cannot see it by definition. I have a neurotypical daughter. I have several not neurotypical daughters, and they're a hoot too. But my neurotypical daughter gently and lovingly actually points out my blind spots to me. And when I was writing my last book, my husband comes up. I was in the middle of writing, and it was a book. It was a chapter on communication. He comes up, he looks at me and says, we need to do this, and he's talking to me, and I'm looking at him to answer, and he looks right at me, turns and walks away. And I turned to my daughter, I'm like, well, that's odd. What was that? He walked out in the middle of a conversation. And she looked at me and said, you both do that. I'm like, moi? Kitten? No, certainly not me. I could never do that. And she's like, oh yeah, you did it to me this morning. Well, she just exposed a blind spot. Now I have the responsibility to be curious about that blind spot instead of saying, hey, you dumb kid, you don't know anything, to say, can you tell me more? Right? So when you find a blind spot, be curious about it, because those of us with ADHD have all kinds of quirks and blind spots. In my second book, I tried to identify some of them to speed up the process for us, but you may not know which ones you do. So finding the blind spot is the first part. The second part is once you find it, be very curious. And then the third part is be okay with it. Okay, I have this tendency. I'm going to try not to do this. Oh, and by the way, my husband wasn't angry. He just remembered that he had to turn on our pool pump. And you know this, in the ADHD brain, pool pump pushed everything out of his brain and said, go turn on the pool pump.
Yes.
Right? So he just looked at me and walked away. So when you have that, just understand we have a lot of glitches around communication that leave our spouses, and I think our spouses are very quick to tell us our blind spots. When they do, try to be curious, try to slow down and go, can you help me understand? What is that?
Yes, approach with curiosity and not judgment.
Yes.
What do you think of 360 feedback? Because in the corporate world, this is quite a big thing. Like entrepreneurs, founders will do this to their company. They'll send out essentially a feedback form to everyone within the company.
Right.
And the people will anonymously, and that's the really key thing, that it's anonymous, will give positive and critical feedback to the founder. So that founder can get like a 360 view of their strengths and weaknesses outside of their own judgment.
Yes.
But I've always thought that sounds really dangerous for someone with ADHD to do, because you're going to be exposing yourself to real criticisms.
Oh,
but they'll be like, if you can stomach that and you can push, like, the benefit of that is monumental. Like that, I think, is if you have a genuine trusted community or friends or family, and they can do it in a way that it's sandwiched with compliments, I think that can really expose certain areas of your personality that you might be completely blind to.
Right. There's an old exercise called Johari's window, and it's how you perceive yourself and how you think others perceive you. And then there's a part, and your listeners can probably find a version of this online. I would recommend doing it to people you trust and love. But then you have people fill out how they perceive you, and you see how much of it actually matches up. Here's a quick example. I just thought I was a really nice person, and I'm going through life just being a really nice person. And I got feedback from my, was when I was in higher ed, from my colleagues who are professors, who called them demanding emails, D-mails.
Gosh.
And it's just because in my hurriedness, I'd be like, yes, no, stop that, do this. I wasn't thinking of myself as impolite. Remember, we just talked. I really think I'm a nice person. But they're like, oh, we hate getting these emails from you. They're so curt. And now I wasn't taking time to go, hi, I hope you enjoyed the sunny weekend, period. I'm wondering if, la, la, la. I wasn't taking that time. I was hurrying.
Sometimes you don't have time to put the niceties, to sandwich the content with the niceties. Like, how are you? Hope you're well. Best wishes. You just need to get to the point. But there's consequences to that.
But if you understand my task-oriented ADHD, I want to quickly get it out of my brain before it flutters away. And so here's what I do now. I type what I want to say, and then I go back and, hi, so-and-so, I hope you enjoyed the sunny weekend. Here's some things that I've been thinking, blah, 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 blah. And then looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Best, Tamara. I have to add that in consciously, or else I'll send D-mails, demanding emails.
Yes. I think I've been guilty of that in the past as well, actually. But I'm more conscious of it now, putting in those niceties when there's time. But yeah, there's that balance between like being efficient and also recognizing that RSD is real with the person that I'm sending the email to.
Well, think about the irony. I'm so sensitive to RSD, but I was writing D-mails. right? So I wasn't thinking how my emails were affecting neurotypicals. Most of them were neurotypical. But they're like, wow, you just answer yes. You just answer no. It sounds like you're angry with us. So I was thinking about myself and trying to communicate only for myself. And I wasn't thinking about how it was being received. And I think a lot of times with RSD, we're only thinking about how we're receiving it. And I really think, I really want to impress, at least I try to do this for myself, is try to work outside myself. How are you experiencing this? And how am I experiencing it without making it all about me? Right?
We should make a petition to make it illegal to reply to an email with a thumbs up emoji. Even though it might be efficient, it's going to be very painful for the person receiving it.
Yes. Well, it is. It's really difficult to do emails. My horrible, difficult thing that I have to do every day, right? Because I hate writing emails, especially when I have to do the, hope you enjoyed your day. Here's this. You hear how much I hate it as an ADHD person. And yet communication really demands that I do it. And yet if someone were doing it to me, I'd be hurt.
With communication and broadening the topic a little bit about sort of supporting your ones nearest to you and your loved ones, if someone's listening and their partner has ADHD, how does one, and this is a big question, but how do you support your partner if they have ADHD, even if they might be frustrating sometimes?
Yeah. So it's funny. In my second book, I write about a lot of communication quirks we have. And I have I have a person who is a professional. She's a friend. She came to my book launch. She's a professional in the ADHD world. And she said, Tamara, I read your book. And I guess I didn't realize I don't ask questions of other people. I just talk and do all my talking. I don't ask questions. And she said, you know what, something I learned from your book? Remember, ADHD professional. She said, I learned to really slow down and ask questions of my spouse. And her spouse was standing right next to her and said, oh, is that why you were asking me about football on the way here? And she goes, of course it was. I hate football. So if you're the non-ADHD spouse, understand we have all kinds of communication quirks. We are going to try to connect with you. And it is going to look like a toddler just starting to walk and fall. Please be kind and patient. A lot of times, because of our own sense of overwhelmed feelings, we'll talk about ourselves, our needs. That can be alienating if you're married to that. And so please just look at us and understand. Also, we can't tell a story from the beginning. We tell it from the inside out.
And go off on 7 unnecessary tangents. And end without finishing our original
unnecessary side
point.
quests. That's us. And so please be kind and patient as we're trying to communicate. Know that we love you a lot, but we may not be great at meeting your communication style.
We might forget our anniversary, but we might also buy you something about your favorite thing that we remember. We heard you say something 2 years ago. You mentioned a hobby, and we've bought you something to do with that hobby because that's how we show our love.
Yes, if we're the gift giving kind. I'm a lousy gift giver, and I'm married to someone who likes gifts. Can you imagine how I go about hurting him all the time? Because I'm like, here's this thing, and he's like, right. And I really try at gifts because that's his love language. But it is difficult to be neurotypical married to an ADHD person. I know we're a handful. We're a handful. And I know that we're fun when we're fun, but I know that we're not. And that we're a big handful. So on behalf of my population, I apologize to you for all the cupboard doors we leave open, all the messes we leave in the middle of the cupboard, all the messes, all the like those casual, not nice comments that might slip out of our mouth, right? So we do need patience. We do need grace. Now, I am not excusing poor behavior. Poor behavior is poor behavior. So if we're cranky, even though we have ADHD, it's still up to us not to injure people with that.
Oh, totally. I spoke to someone recently, and they cheated on their husband, right? And they said, literally, "I'm sorry, it wasn't me. It was my ADHD that cheated on you."
Oh, heck no.
That was honestly the truth. That was what I heard from someone.
No. That makes me so sad.
I know. Yeah.
So ADHD really, it's a neurological difference, not a license for poor behavior.
Absolutely.
And so, we're talking on how do we just survive?
Yeah.
We're not using it as a license for poor behavior. We're like, okay, how do I put socks and shoes on every day?
Real challenges, right? Like the doom pile on the floor of clothes that you have to kind of sniff to see if you can wear again.
Yeah.
But that's some challenges. But what comes with that is amazing loyalty and fun and intuition and creativity. And if we're going on holiday with your partner and they're like, when are we going? Next week? And you're like, no, we're going tonight.
Today. Well, it depends on the amount of, there's a big five personality. And one of the big five personality is the N, neurotic. And neurotic isn't a bad word. It's just how intense you are. So you can be ADHD and high neurotic. And you can be ADHD and lower neurotic. So I have low neurotic. I just don't return emails within the 24 hours expected. They can just sit in my email box longer. A high neurotic person with ADHD would have to return that email immediately. They have that high neuroticism. So the reason I bring that up is if you're traveling with a high neurotic ADHD, and some of my clients have done this, they're in Paris and their ADHD person shuts down because the Paris streets are just too much. And so there's too much to do. And they're like, I can't figure out this. I can't figure out this. And they start to get wrapped around the axle about this. And so that's an example of a high neurotic ADHD person. And traveling will shut them down. Meanwhile, you have the ADHD person who low neurotic is like, yeah, we'll figure it out. And I have to tell you, I'm the, we'll figure it out kind of person. He'll work out. The end.
So fascinating, Tamara. Just finally, I want to go back to your ADHD item, which has been patiently waiting underneath this cloth. It will end up on the shelves behind us after you leave, but for now, I'm going to reveal it.
Da-da-da!
That is sand. It's a sand timer, but I know.
Okay.
I'm joking.
So imagine we're focusing on the sand in here, which is nice and bright and green. So I live in West Michigan, and in West Michigan, we have these beautiful beaches and glacier formed sand, and it's just ground down. Wait, did you want to ask me the question before I tell you? Sorry, I'm just starting it.
No, this is perfect. You carry on. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's ground down sand. It is this fine sand. And, there's dunes that go on for miles and miles in Michigan. They're lovely. There's postcards about this. You go there, you have a lovely day at the beach. And it's fun. And then you bring that beach home with you because it's stuck to your legs. It's stuck in your shoes. It's in your car forever. And you find it in your bedroom. How did he even get there? You find it in your suitcase. The sand is everywhere. And so my metaphor for my ADHD is it's sand. It's everywhere. It can be fun. And it's fun playing at the beach. And yet I can't just keep it at the beach. My ADHD has sand everywhere. And so I'll be going through my house where there shouldn't be sand and I'll feel the grit beneath my feet. And so ADHD affects every nook and cranny of our lives. And I work with clients who think they can keep their ADHD to work. I'm like, no, sir. That is not how that works at all. In fact, how it works is it's affecting every little part of your life. You can't just go to the beach. No, the beach comes home with you. And so there is sand everywhere. when the sand is in a good place, it's fun. And where it doesn't belong, it's not as fun and it gets harder.
Such a cool analogy. I think it's like if you don't have the tools to manage the sand right, it can end up in all the wrong places. Like it can block your drains, it can get into the gaps in your electrics and break your iPhone.
Yeah.
But if you do have a tool like a bucket, you can take that sand and turn it into something magnificent, like a huge castle.
Right.
And be amazing with it.
Right. And yet it's just sand.
Mm.
And so we don't want to make more out of our ADHD than what it is. It's just sand.
Mm.
And so we don't want to create it as our personality. As that person you mentioned a little while ago, we don't want to create it as an excuse for our moral failings, right? Or our character, our lapses of character. We want to understand, I have sand. I have sand that's carried with me everywhere. And so when I get really overwhelmed at a project, I'm like, oh, there's sand and it really doesn't belong here. But how do I work through this sand right now? How do I sweep it up just out of my way so I can get to work? And so that's why my ADHD is like sand.
That's amazing.
It's
Honestly,
everywhere.
Tamara, that's absolutely fascinating. I'm going to place it on the shelves behind us, with like where all the other ADHD items.
Right in front of the razzle dazzle?
Absolutely perfect.
All right.
I'm going to try and finish the interview before the timer runs out.
Yeah, I know. Timers actually make me nervous.
3 minutes. Yeah. I just want to do the ADHD agony aunt section where a member of the community sends in a woe, an ADHD woe, and it goes in the washing machine of woes. The washing machine is my ADHD item because I always, like we discussed earlier, always leave my clothes in the machine after the cycle. But I am using the Tiimo app, which is the sponsor of the show. And since I've started using them, I'm getting better. This week, in the washing machine of woes, someone has written in and asked, I get really crazy mood swings, and I admit that I get very irritable with people. How can I be sure it's ADHD and not something more serious like bipolar disorder?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a tricky one.
Oh, I hear that. That's, in my first book, I confessed. This is one of the things that I was regretting when I published it the first time. It was a hot July day, and I had a black interior to my black car, and I got inside the car, and immediately I was angry. Why? I was hot. And beads of sweat. I was sweating. I was like, ah. And I was explaining this experience to a neurotypical friend. And she rightly said, what did you think would happen? Well, when she says it like that, it seems like I'm ridiculous for being so angry. So I do want to say a couple things to your listener who wrote that. Sometimes we do think we may have bipolar because our emotions change on a dime. If there's usually an external prompting, if your emotions zigzag up and down quickly, it's probably ADHD. If it's more of a role where you have 3 days of really bad, intense energy, you may look at a different diagnosis. But the emotional dysregulation, that's part of the joy of ADHD. So medication can help you. Managing your environment can help you. And really taking on new behaviors can also help you. So medication really can help us manage our moods so that they're not as extreme. And I want to caution your listener, just understand how your moods affect relationships. It's probably really hard on people who live with you or around you. So I'm not saying that to add guilt, certainly not, but this is definitely worth going after. You could find an ADHD coach to help you with emotional regulation. But emotional regulation is the name of the game.
Thank you, Tamara. That was absolutely insightful. Just finally, before we finish, I want to deliver you a letter from the previous guest. every week my guest writes 3 rules to live by, and they put it in that post office, and I deliver the last letter to my current guest. There we go, Tamara.
3 rules to live by. Be generous to family and friends. Be organized, makes everything easier. And turn the hob off.
That is life-saving. The last one could be. The middle one.
What is that?
Turn the hob, like a kitchen hob, like a stove.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the last one could, that's
I
more
didn't
like
know what that was.
It's more like a health and safety bit of advice, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
But
Yeah.
the third, the middle one, I can't remember who wrote the middle one's quite like, just get organized. That's easier said than done,
being
isn't it?
organized makes everything easier. You know what, though? That is the truth.
Yeah.
Do you kind of bristle against it?
Well, I just think that might be easier said than done.
Clearly.
How does one just get organized? I think. Well, I help. I have big whiteboards which help me, and the wristbands, for example.
Right.
But I guess everyone will find their own path to whatever works for them.
Okay, this is correct. Being organized makes everything easier. That is absolutely correct. But you had kind of an emotional reaction to go, if it were that easy.
I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges with ADHD, right? It's like that's part of the condition is we really struggle with. So it's like just fix that part of it.
So what if we just change this rule a little bit? Be organized where you need to be. It will make your life easier.
Yes.
Does that feel more palatable to you?
Yeah, I like that.
It does, doesn't it?
Or maybe like put things in place that will help you get organized. Like work on experimentation to see which hacks do and don't work for you that would nudge you into a more organized lifestyle. Yeah.
So there are areas in my life that can be disorganized. My pantry at home, it's disorganized.
That doesn't need to be organized, you would say?
For me, no. My writing needs to be organized. So I look at it this way. I only have so many organization points in life. I can't spend them all on my food pantry. That would be ridiculous. I can't spend them on my car either. So the best I can do with my car is to keep trash out and call that organized. But if I have only so many points, ADHD in ADHD land, I'm going to send those points for my schedule, keeping my calendar organized, keeping my writing organized, trying to keep my email organized. So is that more palatable?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess like with ADHD, it's the compartments in your head need to be protected more than a neurotypical.
Yeah.
Like obviously energy is finite with everyone, but with us, needs to be more protected. So we have to really be careful with where we put that energy.
Right. Well, when you heard be organized, you're like, bridge too far, because I can't be organized everywhere. And we generalize, this is an ADHD thinking moment, we generalize to this person means be organized in absolutely everywhere. And we don't know if that's what this writer meant, but that's how we took it.
No, it's interesting. I think with organized, because my flat is really disorganized. I'll walk through my front door and trip over a suitcase from a holiday I went on 2 years ago, literally. And there is clothes everywhere. It's a mess. I mean, almost quite shameful to have people over. But other areas of my life, like this podcast, things that mean something to me, couldn't be more organized. I guess it's about identifying what matters to you and then putting attention to that thing.
Yeah, putting all your organization points in strategic places.
Tamara, this has been absolutely fascinating. As I said at the beginning, to have you here in the UK, in the studio, totally surreal. And I can't say thank you enough. Thank you so much for your wisdom.
I loved being here. You are fantastic. So thank you so much.